What is up, guys? We are back at it with another awesome fishing video. Today we are at Roaring River State Park to do some trout fishing. What I'm going to show you for beginners is how you can get a low buck setup and come out here and have an absolute ball with stuff that you can buy at the shop where you buy your daily trout tag. For you intermediate anglers, I've got some tips and tricks for you that are going to just help you catch more fish. So stay tuned. If you're looking to get into this and you don't want to spend a lot of money, I have the solution for you. Somewhere like Walmart or at a local bait and tackle shop where I got this is a $30 combo. $24.99, $29.99, I don't exactly remember, but this thing just collects dust in the corner of my garage. And what I've done is I happen to have some 4-pound P-line in the truck. You can also get some Trilene at Walmart or whatever brand that you like to use, but just pick up some cheap 4-pound line and off you go. So if you come to Roaring River and you have your cheap $30 rod that's got a little bit of a light action to it, it's kind of flimsy, something you could easily jig with, but you need bait, you know, Amazon and Bass Pro have all kinds of stuff. Walmart sells trout fishing stuff. But if you just showed up to the park, can you go inside the store and get some good lures? Absolutely. We have a little 1/64 ounce trout magnet jig, and you also can get a little setup with some Finesse style worms, and you can even get the hooks. Now I didn't buy split shots, but you can get you a little 1/32 ounce 1/64 ounce split shot and hook this up. And what I'm going to show you today is how you can just go with a low buck setup and just absolutely have a ball catching a bunch of fish. Okay guys, we're here at the river. I've got my cheap rod with my store-bought jig here and just some basic 4-pound line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can catch trout even on a cheap setup, and you don't have to have the fancy rods. So first cast. Okay, that doesn't happen every time. So first cast. All right, let's get him back. Okay, let's get this little guy back. So there's a few tricks on how I triggered that fish to bite this instantly. So some beginner tips is rod position. You want that at a 45-degree angle, and how you want to work this bait as it's going down the river and in front of trout is you want to jig that head as much as possible while reeling slow. So you can see in the water how that little jig is just working away, and that's what you want to do with these fish. So make a long cast, keep an eye on your bait, reel down your slack, put your rod tip up, and just start jigging. And you can see the rod tip bouncing that line, which is also bouncing that little jig as it goes down. So that is tip number one. Tip number two is when you have a trout following this bait and they're right behind it and they're circling and circling and circling, do not keep the same pace as if you were normally jigging. When I see a trout get behind my bait, I try to reel as slow as absolutely possible to get that fish to trigger on that bait. So right here in this little pool, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So let's say I'm just fishing along, I'm reeling, there's a trout behind it. I'm going to start to raise my rod tip up and stop reeling so it stays in a zone for a longer period of time to give that trout time to think about whether or not he's going to bite. So as you watch me cast and, you know, have some fish following, if you notice in the video, what you'll see is you'll see me slow down to keep that bait in the zone as long as possible. And I missed that one. So just as I was talking about it, I had two of them running around right behind my bait, and what I did is I just slowed down as much as possible, and essentially all I was doing was letting the current take that bait and just let it sit there and jig along. And that's all you want. You don't want to be out, if one's following it, you don't want to be reeling it away from them like this. It's not what you want at all. A lot of these times these fish are highly pressured. This is a very popular place to come fishing, and when they get pressured like that, the more you can bob this jig per inch of water, and keep it floating at the same pace as the current, the more strikes you are going to get. So let's try to catch another one real quick. So the next tip that I want to share with you guys is I've made a dozen, almost 2 dozen casts through here with this jig. And there's 2 things that you want to do. One, you could just go to another school, or you can just go ahead and change the color. So I just changed the color real quick, and now we're going to give it another try. Well, he was all over that. There he is. So the color change, and I'm already on again, and I've probably only been down here 5 minutes, and this is my second fish. Although I did miss one just a cast ago, 2 casts ago. So that is how simple this little trout magnet jig can be. So nice little rainbow. There we go. So this is just a bright pink worm set up wacky style. From the shop, I bought a size 12 single point hook and a 1/32 ounce sinker. So for new people to this, or maybe a kid, or maybe your wife wants to catch a trout, this is one of the easiest setups you can possibly throw. All you have to do is fire this out there and let it float. That is it, and they will actually come and eat this. Now you can also twitch this, which will help a little bit, and there's also a different way to rig this that I will show you here in just a second. There we go. He didn't miss it that time. Oh, it's a good one. A little bit better fish. There we go. On the old simple pink worm setup, just letting her drift. He might be tired enough where I could get my hands on him. All right, guys, there we go. Nice little rainbow on the pink worm setup. Cast it out, let it float, just wait for a bite. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one more little setup trick. If you don't want to rig this wacky style, you can split the worm in two and rig it just like you had the other jig rigged, the trout magnet jig, and you just put it through the bottom just like so and let that float as well. Now that there's not as much plastic, it is going to fall faster, so you might have to go to a 1/64 ounce weight. I didn't bring any, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop that worm up just a little bit as I see it getting close to the bottom. or I'll just raise my rod tip to keep it from hanging in a rock, and I'm just gonna let it float. I won't come up and look at it. Some lookers, not anything getting behind it. Now, just like the little trout magnet jigs that have little rubber worms on it, how I changed color and started doing well, you can do the same thing with these little worms. So you can buy, I think they're 75 cents or maybe $1 a pack, I'm not 100% sure, but you can buy tons of different colors. So just grab a few greens, pinks, yellows, whatever, and just drift. When the school stops, you know, really looking at it and following up behind it, just change color and keep going. Well, he went straight over to it. It's really hard to see. Here he comes. Oh, that's a good one. I missed you the first time. Nah, 30.
Yeah, I think so. What are you using? Just the worms?
Everything.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm doing a little tutorial for YouTube for my channel. Okay guys, on the pink worm, rigging it up a different way, we got our second one. The last tip that I want to share with you guys on taking a beginner out here to come trout fishing, if they have trouble mending line and, you know, watching the strike and stuff, it is no problem whatsoever to just take a bobber and put that 18 inches to 2 foot above this and just let it float and have them watch the bobber. For the intermediate to advanced fishermen that just want to watch a cool video, or maybe you're even looking at a new rod combo or different line choices, I've got everything you need right here. This is a St. Croix 6'9" ultralight panfish series rod. I absolutely love this rod. It works great in every situation that I get into while trout fishing. I've got that paired up with an Abu Garcia 10C series reel. Now, I absolutely love these reels. I put these little reels through their paces with trout, especially hooking, you know, 7-8 pound trout. Like, it gets put through its paces and it holds up really well for how low buck that reel is. So, also, I have a crawl colored D2 jig. Now what you're gonna see in the video is I was starting out with white and I would switch to green and Arkansas minnow and all kinds of other things, and those fish were coming up and they were getting this back half, biting it and running away. So what you can do with these is you can take a pair of scissors. When you see them short striking these jigs, so you can take a pair of scissors and you can simply just cut off about 1 inch. Crappy pair of scissors, but you get the idea. Now, if they come and short strike a jig like this, what they'll end up doing is they'll short strike the hook now. So there's tip number 1. The next thing that I want to share with you guys, which we're going to do at the water, is how to fish these in different elevations and also what to do when you're getting them to follow. So there's a few rod tip techniques: position, water depth, how fast and slow you retrieve based on what's happening behind your lure. And it's absolutely just a fun thing. Also, for those of you that like to tie your own jigs and then come trout fishing, I've got something to share with you that you might not have seen before. Maybe you have. I've seen them in a few shops, but I do tie my own. And this is what I just call a little rubber leg jig. It's a 1/32 ounce jig head that has some olive chenille on it with little round rubber pieces of elastic that I just tie up towards the head. And I don't even paint the heads to these. I found that it just doesn't matter if you have the right kind of action while throwing it. So let's get down to the river and let's do some more fishing. Okay guys, what I want to show you with this interaction is how it's not only important to slow down your retrieve, but how important it is to start jigging that jig more rapidly as the fish closes in. So I've noticed a fish, I see him following it. So what I do is I make sure my line's tight with my jig head and I jig vigorously. Now the second thing that I want to talk about that you just watched is I missed the fish the first time. So what I did is I instantly threw my jig right back to him as if I had a fly rod in my hand. Typically when you have a trout behind your bait and he bites it and you jerk it away from him, if you can get that bait back in front of him in the first 2 to 3 seconds, he will typically come and bite it again. Now this clip, I'm trying to cover this school to find the active ones. What ended up happening on this cast is I had a trout following it, but I couldn't see him. So you'll see my reel like stutters if I was going to reel it away, and I stopped it.
Okay.
And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this trout a second chance to look at this bait right after he was already following it.
There we go.
Are you kidding me?
Alright, I'm going to have to finesse him either up this current or he's going to have to go down in this pool here and stay away from literally all of those rocks. Let's see if I can't finesse him around the rocks in front of this one. There we go.
Rainbow. Yeah, there we go.
It's one of the better ones that I've ever caught here.
For this video, what I ended up doing is I switched from a 1/32 ounce jig to a 1/16 ounce jig so I could get across to the other side of the stream where I saw all of these fish sitting.
Nipping it.
Oh, that was... Oh no, he's looking for it too. No. Let's see if he sees it. Come on, see it. Oh, here he comes.
That's a good one. Woo! All right. That is a good, healthy 19-incher. He keeps up with that. He very well might throw this jig. Let's get down over here where I can maybe land him. He's got it under his gill plate on one side. Oh, he's got a good one too. He got a good one too. I think this is gonna go for the biggest trout I've ever caught here. Definitely the best fight I've ever had here. Talking to GoPro. Oh. Gonna come slide right here next to you. Boy, that hook just fell right out. There we go. It's a nice 17-inch Rambo, pretty fat. Well, that's not at all what I wanted to do. Actually, I feel really bad for dropping him. There we go. Okay guys, I've been struggling for a little bit on action of the bait, the wind. It was like the 1/16th. All right guys, so I've been struggling for a little bit here. And it seems like the heavier jigs, they fall a little faster. They're just not as active on it. They want something very, very slow sinking. So I talked earlier about how I'm letting my rod tip be at a 45-degree angle and I'm just jigging away. But the wind is just not allowing me to really work the bait the way it needs to be worked. So when I unhook him, I'm gonna make another cast and I'm gonna show you how I'm compensating for terrible wind. Okay, so instead of jigging my rod tip at an upward angle, I mean, if I hold my jig, the wind is pushing it about 1.5 feet away from my rod, so that's how much wind we're dealing with. So when I cast it out there, again, I'm using the wind to help me get this little bitty lure out. What I'm doing is I'm now putting my rod tip down and I'm twitching like this. That way I can control the action of my bait. Now it's twitching forward, not up and down, which I guess it's Trout's preference on how he wants the jig to work, but that's how I've started getting more follows during high sun, windy conditions, still using micro jigs, things like that. Is I'm just letting the jig sink, and then I'm slowly reeling, and I'm using the water to allow my line to not bow terribly in the wind. And then I'm using my rod tip down next to the water to twitch. Oh, that was a good one. Oh my. What happened there? All right. Next pro tip. With these hooks, the hook point is directly in line with the eye. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna twist it just a little bit, so the hook point offsets just a hair, just a little bit, and hopefully that doesn't happen again, because that's two really nice fish in a row. For my last tip, and this is something that I see a lot of anglers not doing while fishing this river, is later in the day, 1, 2 o'clock, the sun's out, is to let that bait sink deeper into a pool. So we're not fishing at the fish that are on the surface, we're fishing at the fish that are on the bottom, and we're trying to get them to come up to the jig. So what I've done is I've let my jig sink 6 to 8 feet farther down in a pool, and what ended up happening is I brought a fish from the bottom up, he came and looked at it, and then he got uninterested. So what I did is I made repeated casts to the same fish to try to get him to come bite. There's a good one. Okay. I'll loosen up drag just a little bit, just so I don't pull the hook, and we'll just fight him out. That is a solid fish. There we go. No, don't, please don't do that. No, 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 no. Not like the last one. There we go. Oh, I thought the line just came off. Really solid. 16-inch. Oh, there we go. Look at that, right in the mouth, just how you want it. Terrible release, but we got him. All right, guys, what a blast today was. We caught a ton of fish, and I hope that you learned something with some of the tips and tricks along the way with the fish catches. Until next time, just keep fishing.